Gentlemen, the off-day quote of the day goes to Nico Mikkola of the Florida Panthers. Asked about trying to shut down Connor McDavid, he said, "That's what we have a Bobby for." Got a laugh from the assembled media. As for the Oilers, Pierre, reflecting on their game, they feel like they played well. And Matthias Ekholm talked a little bit about when they're at their best, they have a really strong belief. We heard Leon Draisaitl last round say our best beats anybody's best. And Ekholm doubled down a little bit on that.
He really did, Ryan. In fact, I think what he was saying is they believe their best is good enough to win the Stanley Cup over the Florida Panthers, and I think they were emboldened in that belief by the way they played despite losing in Game 1. You don't always get that the next day. Sometimes the players wake up, they've seen some of the tape, and they're like, maybe we weren't as good as we thought we were last night, and we were chatting post-game with the media. That wasn't the feeling I got today. I think the Oilers truly feel they had a chance to win the Game 1. Ekholm said they have another level or two they can get at with their team game, and they feel they can get the road split here in Game 2.
Well, let's flip the coin here, though. That was certainly not the Panthers' best in Game 1. They get the win, but we started to see their best in the third period, and they only allowed 7 shots in that period. Obviously, it's 2-0 for most of the time until the empty net goal comes late. And Florida really kind of sucked the life out of the game at that point in time. Didn't give up a lot to Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, the main guys that they have circled on the board to shut down. And so Paul Maurice felt like they were able to make some adjustments in game that got them to their best by their third period. He called it the starting point for what they want in the series. And so, sometimes you got to go to a day like this to start making those adjustments. The Panthers feel like they already got that process underway.
Often when the offense isn't coming, Kris Knoblauch will go to the nuclear option. He'll put McDavid and Draisaitl together, Pierre. We saw him do that towards the back half of game number 1, and the results weren't there. It doesn't always work. And in fact, the deeper numbers show it isn't as effective as you might think. So he's got some decisions to make here, but that's certainly one of them.
Yeah, and we asked Paul Maurice about it too because they pre-scouted for it. They know it's coming at some point in each game in this series, usually after the Oilers PK. But like you said, the entire third period pretty much as they're chasing the game, trying to score a goal. Here's the thing. Paul Maurice says basically no team in the league can defend it. I think he's having fun a bit with all this because the reality is the Panthers did defend it in the third period. And he said they reacted by putting Reinhart with Barkov and Luosterainen. They played pretty well defensively against the big guns for the Edmonton Oilers, and I wonder really deep down if it's not actually scarier for Florida when Draisaitl and McDavid are split up and they spread out the offense for Edmonton.
Well, because especially in that case, they have Forsling, such a strong defender. They really use him as their true matchup player in this series. And so if both guys are on one pair, and there's no decision there. And it's not to say they don't have other players that can't handle that assignment. And but leaving the weakness of the other lines, or maybe not having quite as much offensive punch when they're together, I could see Florida actually enjoying it. Now, it's tough for those shifts, and obviously McDavid and Draisaitl play a lot, so it's not as though they're doing a full rotation there on the bench. But I don't think the Panthers mind it too much, actually.
Kind of interesting, Maurice just heaping the praise on McDavid and Draisaitl in that press conference. What did he say? That sort of like we all need to take a minute and realize as media we're even desensitized to it because we see it so often. CJ, he kind of went on and on about how good these guys are. I guess maybe he can do that right now. They're in a good position.
Up 1-0. Why put anything more on the bulletin board, right? I mean, if you're down 3-1, maybe you're trying to undermine. Hey, they're not infallible. They're still human. You're starting to say those things. But yeah, you made them sound like, man, we don't even appreciate how great they are. Look at the scoring sheet. No one's been able to shut them down. Everyone had a plan, So he really is, building up the Oilers stars, at least at this early stage of the series.
And maybe this is unfair, but an observation on my part, the juxtaposition of the comfort level of Paul Maurice so far in this Cup final on this stage compared to a first-year NHL head coach like Kris Knoblauch has been, I think, very obvious. And Kris Knoblauch, to me, one of his great traits so far since being Oilers head coach has been his poise on the bench. Yep. The Oilers don't overreact to penalties. They don't seem to have the same bickering with calls from the refs. That's been the great trademark of Kris Knoblauch, except that since the Oilers have arrived here in South Florida, you may disagree, Ryan, you've been around the team more. Boy, the night and day between Paul Maurice and Kris Knoblauch as far as being comfortable in this moment so far, I think has been
Well, in fairness, Paul Maurice and his media availabilities make any coach, look like an angry John Tortorella by comparison. So it's maybe a little bit unfair in that regard. He does have some decisions to make, though. Kris Knoblauch does. Pierre, he got away from a winning lineup from Game 6 against the Dallas Stars. He made some changes. He put Nurse and Ceci back together. He faced a lot of questions about that today. They were on the ice for 2 goals against. Philip Broberg moved over to the right, played really, really well. So I think he's got some decisions to make about who plays where on the blue line and if he keeps Nurse and Ceci together. He's shown that he can make a lot of good decisions, Pierre. What do you think? Will we see a change?
I think so. And I'm thinking about Vincent Desharnais, his physicality and the aggressive Florida forecheck and the way the Panthers like to hang it around the net and make life difficult on Stuart Skinner. I think you want that big body out there crushing some Florida Panthers, quite frankly. Honestly, I was surprised we didn't see it in Game 1. And you mentioned it. It's rare for a coach to change a winning lineup after a big playoff win, albeit a playoff win in which you're outshot 34-10, and that's why we saw those changes.
Oilers have lost back-to-back games just once so far in these playoffs. They look to bounce back in game number 2.